4 candidates have been chosen or shortlisted for their seniority. This is, of course, as Chief Justice or as our next Chief Justice. But remember, that's not the only consideration for the position of the country's top magistrate. After all, they will be occupying an all-too-important post. So, what other factors are we looking at here, Charles?
Well, Sean, the past decade has definitely been a tumultuous one for the post of Chief Justice. If we recall briefly, starting from the impeachment of Chief Justice Renato Corona, then we had the ouster of former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno just last year. Of course, the appointment of Sereno came as a departure from the established rule in the Supreme Court relating to seniority, but then the President has gone on to say that he is definitely considering the seniority of the candidate when considering his appointments to CJ. And as we know, Chief Justice Teresita Leonardo de Castro briefly served as CJ after Sereno for just 43 days. Now we have CJ Bersamin, set to retire later this month, and there are currently 4 candidates vying for the position, John.
All right, so since we changed after CJ Sereno, so we have De Castro. That's then Ben Bersamin again. Now we're back to the normal, quick to retire kind of process for CJ. So right now we're talking about 4 candidates. Who's up front?
Right. If we're to consider seniority, of course, we have to consider Justice Diosdado Peralta as the frontrunner. He was appointed by GMA back in 2009, and he is from Ilocos Norte before becoming a fiscal in Lawag and then a judge in Quezon City. As we mentioned earlier in the report, he did have something to do with some drug cases. In fact, he penned this decision that stressed the proper procedure on the custody of evidence in drug cases, Sean. And one of the more interesting rulings of Justice Peralta recently is that he penned the decision allowing the burial of Ferdinand Marcos at the Libingan ng mga Bayani, and he is set to retire in 2022. And of course, now we have the 2 Reyes Juniors. Let's start with Andres Reyes Jr. He was appointed by Duterte in 2017. He is a 3rd-generation justice who worked his way up through the courts as a trial judge for 12 years in Makati and Rizal. And among the 4 candidates, he is looking at the shortest possible stint as CJ, as he's set to retire in May of 2020. And not far behind him in terms of age is Jose Reyes Jr. He was also appointed by the President and is a fellow San Beda Law graduate. And he is a longtime teacher in LaSalle who served as a judge in Rizal and Pasig. This guy is a bit of a religious fellow, Sean, and he is active in several organizations. He's set to retire just a few months later compared to Andres Reyes Jr. He's set to retire in September of 2020. And the last candidate is Justice Bernabe. She's from Bulacan, and she did some private practice for around 15 years before becoming a judge in 1996. MTC judge in 1996, RTC judge in 2002, and Justice of the Court of Appeals in 2006. You notice these guys, justices of the Supreme Court are usually career justices, Sean. And among the 4, voting has been pretty consistent in such cases like the same-sex marriage, the case against former President Pinoy relating to the Mama Sapano massacre, and the extension of martial law in Mindanao. One interesting thing to note, though, Sean, is that Justice Bernabe voted against the removal of Sereno, and she also voted against keeping Senator Laila De Lima in jail. So if you're going to look for something different among the 4 justices, it's definitely Justice Bernabe who stands out in terms of how she has decided, Sean.
Also the only rose among the thorns,
exactly.
At least for this batch, right? So I guess we'll wait and see. Like we said, the game has changed so far, and the rules or the tradition or the culture has been chucked out the window. So we'll see what happens, I guess, after the JBC interviews.
Definitely, Sean.